Just before we start, let's have everybody wave to everybody. Good morning, good morning. Hi, hi. It is so great to see. Oh, and look, we're 6 feet away. Okay, we're gonna get started to start with kind of to give everyone, I think I need to actually, I'm trying to decide which view. First, this is like our first time to actually use this for teaching in this way. I've had a couple of practice groups this week. Thank you, those of you that are on here that helped with that. But we are learning as we go. So your patience is appreciated. To kind of set up what we're doing. So today we're picking back up with the Resisting Racism Sunday School series that we started just 2 weeks ago. I don't know about y'all, but it feels like a lifetime ago. We began with what is racism, which we'll do a little review here in a few minutes. Today, we're picking up with what is whiteness. And then we'll be gathering in this fashion for the next few weeks. Next Sunday, the 29th, we'll be interrupting racist patterns. And then our last class will be where do we go from here. So we hope that y'all will plan on joining us for those over the next 2 weeks. So with that kind of is the schedule. We will plan to end by 10:45 so that you can refill your coffee cup, take a restroom break, let the dog out, whatever you need to do before joining us for our Facebook Live time of worship together. So that is the plan this morning. I think we've talked through some of the basics of Zoom, this Zooming together. Again, we're all learning this as we go. We're going to keep everybody muted. When we have some conversation, we'll ask folks to use that raise your hand button, which I believe you can get to with manage participants, right? And then you can, I think, raise your hand that way. You can also share reactions, like if I were to say, can everybody hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. So you can either physically do it, or you can click the reaction button and it'll appear on the screen in front of you. And we can kind of do a roll call and check on things that way as well. Or if you really like something, you can even give us an applause. So some fun little parts of Zoom that will add to our engagement together. We have a comment section. If you look over to the group chat, if you don't have a chat box open, on your little toolbar, there's a button that says chat. You'll click on that. And mine is on the side, but I've heard different ones open in different ways. And this is a way like I can say, oh, I can send to every, oh, do I still, hold on. Let me admit 2 more people. There we go. I can send a little note to everyone. I just said good morning, but this is a way if as we're going, if you have some comments or if you want to say something to everyone here or ask something, comment on what people are eating apparently is also an option, Devon. And but that comment section you can use there. You'll notice that you can select who the comments are going to. I have it as everyone, so when I comment, everyone's going to see what I write. You can also send something just to an individual if you need to, but just make sure you see who is selected in that to button. Good, and people are saying hello to everybody. And so you can use that to kind of speak to the group. Let's see what else I have on my list. Zooming together, comment section, stay muted, raise your hand if you need something. And we're not going to have time to probably engage in a whole lot of all of us chatting together. And so that's where we might ask you to respond in the comment section so that we can all have some times to comment. With that, we're gonna move to a prayer, kind of centering ourselves. I have one of the candles that we've been using, and I'm gonna light that as a reminder of God's presence with us through the Holy Spirit with us and in our conversation together. Candle. And now listen to these words from white anti-racism activist Tim Wise, author of White Like Me. He writes, "The irony of American history is the tendency of good white Americans to presume racial innocence. Ignorance of how we are shaped racially is the first sign of privilege. In other words, it is a privilege to ignore the consequences of race in America." And now let us pray a prayer of acknowledgement and lament. This prayer is written by Elizabeth Behrens from the book Be the Bridge. Let us pray. Holy God, as we become aware of the intensity of the racial divide, our hearts are broken. Help us not to rush from this place of hurting to triumphalism or repair, but rather lament as you call us to do. May our lament be a form of worship, a joining of our hearts with yours as we grieve the lack of your kingdom justice here on earth. Strengthen us for this path, as without you, the overwhelming depth of the problems that must be addressed and acknowledged would be devastating. We know that you mourn with us and comfort us as we mourn with one another. In Christ's holy name, amen. So, Devon, let's review. I think I'm going to share. So, give me a thumbs up using your reactions button if you were with us 2 weeks ago to hear about what is racism. If you were in Wesley Hall for what is racism. Okay. So a good number, and we're gonna do kind of a good review here. Devon, I'm going to share should we do the principles, Devon?
Let's go through the principles.
Okay, let me find the principles. Actually, hold on. It's showing, let me switch principles for group discussion.
Some of y'all may be on your phones or maybe aren't able to see what we're doing visually. So we'll pull up a few documents for those who have their screens, and we're gonna read through some of those. So if you can't see them, hopefully you'll be able to hear what we're doing.
And I did share this document in the comments. So you also have it if you would like to open that. I shared 2 documents before everyone came in. So Devon, how do you want to do this?
Why don't we just read along with them? We could have.
So these are the principles for group discussion, kind of to help guide us. And they're also part of our learning together. So number 1, a strong opinion is not the same as informed knowledge.
Number 2, there is a difference between agreement and understanding. When discussing complex social and institutional dynamics such as racism, consider whether I don't agree may actually mean I don't understand.
Number 3, we have a deep interest in denying the forms of oppression that benefit us. We may also have an interest in denying forms of oppression that harm us. For example, people of color can deny the existence of racism and even support its structures. This denial may keep them from feeling overwhelmed by the daily slights or protects them from the penalties of confronting white people on racism. However, regardless of the reason this denial still benefits whites at the group level, not people of color.
Racism goes beyond individual intentions to collective group patterns.
We don't have to be aware of racism in order for it to exist.
Racial position, whether we identify as white, a person of color, or multiracial, will greatly affect our ability to see racism. For example, if we swim against the current of racial privilege, it's often easier to recognize, while it's harder to recognize if we swim with the current.
Putting our effort into protecting rather than expanding our current worldview prevents our intellectual, emotional, and spiritual growth. So those are our principles. And now let's take a look and review some of what we talked about 2 weeks ago when we began talking about with what is racism, week 1. Devon, you want to do that?
Sure. So do we want to start with discrimination there? Let's, some of the differences between, there's prejudice, there's discrimination, there's racism. So discrimination is defined here. And remember, we're using this vocabulary kind of database just so that we're all on the same page and how we're using these terms. You may have heard these terms used in different ways throughout your life. So you may have heard racism defined a different way. The reason we have this resource is so that we're all on the same page, that when I say the word racism, this is what I'm meaning when I say that. So the same here with discrimination, which we define as the denial of justice and fair treatment by both individuals and institutions in many areas, including employment, education, housing, banking, and political rights. Discrimination is an action that can follow prejudicial thinking.
And then we talked about prejudice. Judging or making a decision about a person or group of people without sufficient knowledge. Prejudicial thinking is frequently based on stereotypes, which our definition of stereotype is an oversimplified generalization about a person or group of people without regard for individual differences. Even seemingly positive stereotypes that link a person or group to a specific positive trait can have negative consequences.
Yeah. And so for racism, which was what we talked about, 2 weeks ago, this is the definition we had for racism, which is typically called power plus prejudice, or prejudice plus power equals racism. So racism describes the result attitudes being combined with the power to dominate and control the systems and institutions capable of carrying out discriminatory practices. In other words, racism results from access to power to enforce prejudices so as to advantage one racial group. Just reviewing quickly of some of the things we went through last time, the reason we talk about racism this way is because without understanding its link to power, really we're just talking about prejudice. Anyone can be prejudiced. Anybody can be prejudiced. People of color can be prejudiced towards white people. But racism in particular is the system of power. It's the same when we talk about sexism, that women can be prejudiced towards men, but the power of sexism exists with men, at least especially in our society and pretty much the world. And so it's the analogy that Robin DiAngelo gave in her video a few weeks back, was that idea that women could advocate and fight for the right to vote, but men had to allow that opportunity because that was where the power existed. And so those women could have hated the men, but that wasn't sexism. Sexism was the refusal of those rights to women. That's the power system. So racism is thought in a similar way.
Okay, Devon, you want to set up? Shall we move to our first video clip?
First video clip, as Cathy gets that ready. This is a wonderful, I like to think of it in a way as an icebreaker because one, it's really funny, but also it exposes something that is so subtle in our society in the way in which we're raised, the stories we hear, the way that we think about things. And this is a famous clip. You've probably seen it as one of your daily interruptions if you've been following along. But this is a clip of Muhammad Ali talking about how white and black is often talked about in our culture. So take a look and we'll come back.
Things are getting much better, but I always wondered when I went to church on Sundays. I've always been one to, I'm not just a boxer. I do a lot of reading, a lot of studying. I ask questions. I travel these countries and watch how their people live, and I learn. And I always ask my mother, I said, Mother, how come is everything white? I said, why is Jesus white with blonde hair and blue eyes? Why is the Lord's Supper all white men? Angels are white, Pope and Mary and even the angels. I said, Mother, when we die, do we go to heaven? She said, naturally we go to heaven. I said, well, what happened to all the black angels when they took the pictures? I said, oh, I know. If the white folks was in heaven too, then the black angels were in the kitchen preparing the milk and honey. I said, listen, you quit saying that, boy. I was always curious, and I always wondered why I had to die to go to heaven. Why I couldn't have pretty cars and good money and nice homes now? Why do I have to wait till I die to get milk and honey? And I said, Mama, I don't want no milk and honey. I like steaks and I said, milk and honey is a laxative anyway. They have a lot of bathrooms in heaven. So anyway, I was always curious. I always wondered why. You know, Tarzan is the king of the jungle in Africa. He was white. I saw this white man swinging around Africa with a diaper on, hollering, oh! Do you all see Tarzan over here?
Right.
Tarzan? And all the Africans, so he's beating them up and breaking the lion's jaw. And here's Tarzan talking to the animals, and the Africans been there for centuries, and he yet can't talk to the animals. Only Tarzan can talk to the animals. I always wondered why Miss America was always white. All the beautiful brown women in America, beautiful suntans, beautiful shapes, all tight complexions, but she always was white. And Miss World was always white. And Miss Universe was always white. And then they got some stuff called White House cigars, White Swan soap, King White soap, White Cloud tissue paper, White Rain hair rinse, White Tornado flow wax. Everything was white. And the angel food cake was the white cake, and the devil food cake was the chocolate cake. I said, Mama, why is everything white? I always wondered, you know, and the president lived in the White House. And Mary had a little lamb, its feet as white as snow, and Snow White. And everything was white. Santa Claus was white. And everything bad was black. The little ugly duckling was a black duck, and the black cat was the bad luck. And if I threaten you, I'm going to blackmail you. I said, Mama, why don't they call it white mail? They lie too. I was always curious, and then this is when I knew something was wrong. When the Olympic gold medal in Rome, Italy. Olympic champion, the Russian standing right here, and the Pole right here. Is Poland considered a communist country?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm defeating America's so-called threats or enemies. And the flag is going, ton, 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 ton. I'm standing so proud. Ton, 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 ton. And I done whooped the world for America. Ton, 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 ton. I took my gold medal, thought I'd invented something. I said, man, I know I'm going to get my people freedom there. I'm the champion of the whole world, Olympic champion. I know I can eat downtown now. And I went downtown that day, had my big old medal on, and went in the restaurants. At that time, black things weren't integrated. The black folks couldn't eat downtown. And I went downtown, and I sat down, and I said, you know, a cup of coffee, hot dog. The lady said, we don't serve Negroes. I was so mad. I said, I don't eat them either. Just give me a couple of hot dogs. I said, I'm the Olympic gold medal. 3 days ago, I fought for this country in Rome. I won the gold medal, and I'm going to eat. The manager, I heard her tell the manager, and he said, well, I'm not the man. Now he's got to go out. Anyway, I didn't raise no money. They put me out. And I had to leave that restaurant in my hometown where I went to church and served in their Christianity and fought, and daddy fought in all the wars. Just wanted the gold medal and couldn't eat downtown. I said, something's wrong.
Okay, Devon.
Yes, so we wanted to take an opportunity here. Um, and in the comments, your little comment tab over there, your little chat tab, we wanted to see if y'all could think of some other ways that kind of that subtle narrative of white good, black bad, ways in which you've seen that in your life. If there are examples, even especially within Christianity and some of the symbolism that we use within Christianity. But if you could comment in the tabs over there, we might even unmute a few of y'all to explain further if we see something that we want to share, but we might just read them also. So what are some examples where white is good or the normal and black is seen as bad or something negative? We'll give y'all just a few seconds, minutes there to sound off a few of those in the comments. You can also try, if there's any examples that you can think of where that's reversed, where actually the black is seen as good and the white is seen as negative. Sound off with a few of those in the comments there, and we'll give y'all just a
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Darth Vader wears black, but Jedis wear white. That's right. Cowboys in a lot of films, if they have a tan hat, that usually means they're the good guy. If they have a black hat, they're usually the enemy. Flesh-colored crayons, yeah, are usually white.
Yes. Yeah.
When thinking about clothes and sheets, white is usually considered fresh and clean. In the Catechism, black sins filled our white milk bottle souls.
So as you continue, if you have others do that in the comments, I wanted to read from our White Fragility book examples of this. This is Robin DiAngelo. This is in the chapter 4, How Does Race Shape the Lives of White People? And so this is the author, Robin DiAngelo, speaking about her life as a white person and this sense of belonging. And this really resonated with me and got me thinking. And it's examples like what we're listing here of some of the ways whiteness is normal, has been normalized. So she writes, as I move through my daily life, my race is unremarkable. I belong when I turn on the TV, read best-selling novels, and watch blockbuster movies. I belong when I walk past the magazine racks at the grocery store or drive past billboards. I belong when I see the overwhelming number of white people on lists of the, quote, most beautiful. I may feel inadequate in light of my age or weight, but I will belong racially. For example, in 2017, singer Rihanna introduced a makeup line for women of all skin colors. Gratitude from women of color poured in. Many of their tweets included the exclamation, finally. These are tweets I have never needed to send. I belong when I look at my teachers, counselors, and classmates. I belong when I learn about the history of my country throughout the year and when I am shown its heroes and heroines, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Robert E. Lee, Amelia Earhart, Susan B. Anthony, John Glenn, Sally Ride, and Louisa May Alcott. I belong when I look through my textbooks and at all the pictures of my classroom walls. I belong when I speak to my children's teachers, when I talk to their camp counselors, when I consult with their doctors and dentists. No matter how I might explain why all these representations are overwhelmingly white, they still shape my identity and worldview. In virtually every situation or context deemed normal, neutral, or prestigious in society, I belong racially. This belonging is a deep and ever-present feeling that has always been with me. Belonging has settled deep into my consciousness. It shapes my daily thoughts and concerns, what I reach for in life, and what I expect to find. The experience of belonging is so natural that I do not have to think about it. The rare moments in which I don't belong racially come as a surprise that I can either enjoy for its novelty or easily avoid if I find it unsettling. So one of the questions she asks kind of goes along with what we were just commenting of identifying, at least, and some of you that were in the book group last week, we did this, some of the ways that white racial belonging has been conveyed to you in the last week. And a lot of this is what you all have shared here in the comments. And one of to get the idea going, she shares, you might start by opening your wallet and looking at the bills there. So this idea of whiteness being everywhere, being the norm. Go ahead, Devon.
I had a story that when I was in college, I worked for a youth ministry, and we would go to these weekend camps all the time. And every once in a while, we would go to what they cleverly called Urban Weekend, which usually meant it was predominantly Black people congregating to this camp that usually is run by white people. And one of the things that they changed in this weekend, it was like a knowledgeable change, was there's a Christian worship song that's called Jesus Paid It All. It's, lyrics are, Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. And this was a lyric that they knew, hey, we probably shouldn't sing that this weekend. And so they didn't sing it that whole weekend, but then the very next weekend, they sang it again now that it wasn't predominantly. And I was just like, there's not a follow through in that. So there are just so many examples of where we're aware of this distinction. And yet it's kind of a perfect example of whiteness. And I feel like, is there anything else you want to add, Cathy?
No, when we're ready, we'll move to the Verge video.
Well, I want to set up, I feel like we haven't defined whiteness, and the ways in which it functions. If you hear us though using this term whiteness, what we really are talking about is white culture. It's this dominant culture that makes up, it's kind of the unnamed dominant culture. I talk a little bit about that today in the sermon, this idea of this kind of blind culture that dominates and invites people to assimilate into whiteness without really recognizing that that's what it's doing all the time. Sometimes it's very overt. It's like, you need to be more like us. Look at how respectable we are. You need to talk like we do. You need to speak English. You need to vote this way. You need to worship this way. These are these things that we do to other cultures where we almost erase that culture and ask them to assimilate into whiteness, which is something that dominates our laws, our systems, our ways of understanding. It's like this narrative. It's a story in the United States in particular that invites people to assimilate. We find this in old laws. We talked about this in our racism class, about how when Italians first came over here, they were discriminated against. They were mistreated legally, and this slow process of Italians even assimilating into what it meant to be white, and how there's even like non-white Hispanic category in census. And so there's these ways in which people are trying to get into the power is whiteness. And I found this video through a network called Verge, and there's this artist, his name's Propaganda. He's a Christian rap artist, or he'd probably say that he's a rap artist who's Christian. But I feel like he explains this assimilating thing really well. So Cathy, send it off.
Hold on. No, skip ads.
Do you feel like specifically today, when white people look back at MLK, civil rights, they almost look back at it as, okay, we're done. Like everything's been fixed. You know, we're good.
Yeah, I think that like it's this like, again, it's a fixed moment in time you can point at, because I think that like, again, just the psychological like makeup says I need a chronological like linear event. I can say that we were wrong, now we're right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And say, look, we did something about it. You know. So yeah, and that's neat. That's clean. It's. I can chop this in half and say we were losers then, now we're winners. You know. Yeah. So I feel like, and I think that like there's a mix between like reality and what you hope to be reality. I think a lot of times, like, again, because the concept is so ghastly, like that you wish that was it. So we're gonna put everything in our power to be like, no, that was it. No, I'm telling you, it was it. Like, never mind all this was it, you know? So I absolutely believe that, like, you know, that moment not only gave hope, but it also gave an illusion, because you have these, now our schools are desegregated, and then you have like this beginning of wealth come to the you know, Black communities or just minority communities in general. So there's this illusion of like integration, but it's not integration. It's only going one way. Like we are being forced into this community that is not going to adjust for us. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, no, you adjust. We adjust for you. You don't adjust for us. You know what I'm saying? So there's this illusion that like, oh, well, I have a Black neighbor. Like, I don't understand what you're talking about, but the Black neighbor's miserable. You know what I'm saying? Like, might as well be in the middle of Siberia as far as like culturally speaking, and understanding the world that they're in and having to learn to adjust. So when you have, you know, no knowledge of how like that dominant culture works, there's going to be a million faux pas. There's going to be a million different like things. When I went to visit my wife's grandmother in Mexico, like I did some incredibly insulting things because I just didn't know the culture, you know what I'm saying? So that's gonna happen, you know what I mean? And they were offensive, and the nation, you know, that her family looked at me all weird, like this kid has no respect. And it's like, no, I just don't know. Like I want to be involved in this. I just don't know, you know what I'm saying? So you blow that up to where we are, where we were as a culture, when like now you have this, you know, these people that have been disenfranchised for so long, somehow or another we're allowed to come into this door. Like, I'm gonna be timid, I'm gonna not understand how it works. And then when I start saying, hey, I kind of, you let me in, but like, can I have, you know, can I have a seat? And you're like, no, you can't sit down though. I'm like, well, what, I gotta stand here while I'm in your house? Why let you in the house? So I don't understand why you're having a problem. Because like everybody's sitting down. How come I can't sit down? I need you to not be so loud. You know, so there's just so many of these like clear things that gave the illusion of like integration that really wasn't. Yeah. You know, and we're still, I feel like, not only seeing that, but or feeling the pains of that. I think we're also seeing more and more upheaval and evidence that like, look, dude, like, let's burst your bubble. Like, it's this, your illusion of integration is that it's an illusion.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, and then when you're told, hey, you're too loud, it's again, another sign of white privilege is you get to dictate.
You decide what loud is.
What loud is, exactly.
Exactly.
And another sign is you don't have to go, like you said, you don't have to go through the day thinking about, is this going to come across as this? You don't have to think about your color. You don't have to think about race.
Yeah, an African American, by definition, just for survival, in some ways you just have to be bicultural. Yeah. If you're gonna in any way, you know, quote unquote succeed, you have to understand your own culture and white culture. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that's just the dominant culture here. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So, but it doesn't work both ways. You can live your entire life if you chose, it's cool that you didn't, but you could have lived your entire life without any interaction with any other culture and be fine.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't have that. I don't have that privilege, you know?
Yeah.
Privilege. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's a privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah. In kind of bringing that in maybe a more succinct way, we talk about this idea of assimilation. He uses the word integration, that when we look at America and we go, we've integrated all these things, it really was one movement. It was integrating people into whiteness, into this. There wasn't, you know, it's like when I think about myself, I don't have to learn about another culture. I don't have to learn how another culture functions, works, behaves, and I can live my whole life with that privilege. What they're talking about is to be able to successfully assimilate. He's saying he has to be bicultural. He has to understand white culture just to be able to coexist in an easy kind of way. And that's something I don't have to do. Thankfully, we're all here. We're talking about these kinds of things. We're trying to become more aware, but many of us don't even understand white culture yet. And so that's part of the work here we're doing today is leaning in and helping us understand that dominant culture and the ways in which it kind of enforces its views and understandings and practices on other people. It makes them move into us, and I say us as a white person, rather than our leaning in and understanding of. I believe, Cathy, we have a worksheet that just, if you go to your chat, we posted what is this white privilege checklist. You may have seen that before. We've used that in some of our other classes. But when you go through it, you're going to see all these kinds of things that when I first saw this, I like had a panic attack almost, because it's just so disruptive. But there it is. And there's just all these different ways in which the dominant culture doesn't have to think about these things, or that the dominant culture is presumed the normal one or the best one. And it comes down to even things like Band-Aids. You can get a Band-Aid that's in your skin color. That's something that until relatively recently hadn't changed. If you wanted a Band-Aid and you had a black finger, you had to have a white Band-Aid on it. Cathy, are there any of these that really stand out to you?
Oh, there's so many. Post in the comments if there's some that really resonate with you, or that are kind of like, oh, wow, hadn't thought about that.
13 is a really common one. I'm never asked to speak for all of the people of my race.
We're having trouble there. Okay. Yes, so Devon, we need to wrap up. I've got to get to live worship here in a minute. But we invite you, I shared that document to kind of go through that on your own or with your family and think about, and are there things that you would add? And we'll be posting and sharing. We have a couple of other articles that we wanted to share, so we'll do that some this week, kind of keep you thinking and learning about whiteness as we move toward next Sunday, where we'll be disrupting racist patterns. I do want to invite everyone, since we've shifted everything, the White Fragility, if you're reading White Fragility, the book, we would love for you to join us for our small groups. There were some Sunday school classes that were doing it. I have created Zoom meetings throughout the week, and even if you weren't in one of the small groups before, we would love to have you jump in. Those were shared on Facebook, and then we'll be working with Mary as a way to get that out in an email form. But we, again, would love to have you talking about chapters 7, 8, and 9 this week. So Devon, anything for closing?
I think just, I would offer the challenge of kind of that invitation the idea of being bicultural and thinking about the ways in which maybe you've never had to be challenged to really understand another culture. Maybe the opportunity to enter into other cultures would be something. Obviously, we're all in isolation right now, so it's a little bit more challenging. But thinking of ways in which we can cross those barriers and exit our culture. Again, I'm saying our as a white person, but to exit this culture and try and learn more, rather than asking people to kind of just move into what I am existing in. Find ways that you can move yourself into other forms of existence, other forms of experience and culture and food and art. And kind of, if you're looking for things to do right now, maybe read some books that aren't written by white people, watch some movies that are not featuring the hero story of white people, especially civil rights movies that center white people. Find ways in which you can learn more about other cultures and other experiences while we're all.
Do you stop? Oh, I'm loving all of the comments. We're gonna have to close now, y'all. The music, I believe, has already started for our time of worship through Facebook Live. And just a note, even if you don't have Facebook, you can still access that. Where did Mary? I don't see Mary. She may have gone to, you can still get that even if you're not on Facebook. So with that, any last comments? There's Mary just shared the Facebook, so it's on our website, so you can join us for that. Robbie, which video? The videos we shared here today?
Yes.
Yes, we will post those. I'm making little notes of things, and we can include that in an email. Maybe Mary and I could work together and send like a follow-up email with the book groups and with some of the links and things we've shared in documents.
Thank you.
We'll work on that, post videos. Yep, I love it. Anything else before we say farewell for now?
See you in the background.